Season 1 of Narcos begins in 1973, where thanks to support from US President Richard Nixon, Chilean dictator Augusto Pinochet is violently cracking down on drug trafficking, killing every offender apprehended by firing squad. Drug chemist Cockroach manages to escape Pinochet's military forces, and needing to get his cocaine out of the country, he partners up with Colombian drug smuggler Pablo Escobar. Escobar is impressed with the quality of Cockroach's product and realizes that if cocaine could be successfully trafficked to Miami, they could stand to make a fortune. Pablo Escobar already has most of the local police in Medellin, Colombia in his pocket, but taking his empire international could turn him into the most powerful drug kingpin of all. Working alongside Escobar is his wife Tata, his mother Hermilda, and his cousin Gustavo. Over the next several years, Escobar's empire rapidly expands, with his super labs producing 10,000 kilos of cocaine per week, netting the kingpin over $5 billion a year. Cockroach grows resentful at how much more money Escobar is making off of what was originally his product, and bitterly rats out a shipment to the Department of Security. Unbeknownst to Cockroach, Escobar is already paying corrupt agents to overlook his drug trafficking, and when he discovers Cockroach's betrayal, he murders him. The exponential rise in cocaine's popularity in America leads to many deaths caused by the drug, and so in 1981, President Ronald Reagan declares a war on drugs. Seeing firsthand the violence and death that Pablo Escobar's cocaine empire has brought to Miami, including the death of his partner Brady at the hands of Escobar's loyal sicario La Kika, DEA agent Steve Murphy decides to move to Colombia with his wife Connie to join the front lines of the fight. Upon arriving in Colombia, Murphy is immediately identified as a DEA agent by Escobar's men, putting a target on his head. Murphy's partner in the DEA is Javier Peña, who takes many rule-breaking and potentially unethical measures in his quest to bring down Pablo Escobar. The pair also team up with Colonel Horacio Carrillo of the Colombian National Police, one of the few officers not corruptly on Escobar's payroll, who is just as passionate about bringing down the kingpin and cleaning up the streets that he calls home. Meanwhile, a communist guerrilla group known as M19 decides to face off against Escobar and the other narcos of Colombia themselves. Led by Ivan the Terrible, the group kidnaps Marta, the sister of local kingpins Jorge and Fabio Ochoa. In response, Pablo Escobar forms the Medellin cartel with fellow narcos Gustavo, Fernando Galeano, Jose Gacha, Carlos Later, and the Ochoa brothers in an effort to strengthen their collective power. As the cartel mercilessly attacks and kills members of M19, Ivan releases Marta and offers himself up to Escobar to put a stop to the violence. But instead of killing Ivan, Escobar spares his life, knowing that a loyal militia could prove useful to him in the future. As Pablo Escobar continues to rise in power and influence, he begins giving back to his community in Medellin and is hailed as a local hero. This inspires Escobar to next seek political power. He begins sleeping with the journalist Valeria Velez for her assistance in running for political office, and she connects him to Fernando Duque, a powerful lawyer and lobbyist who helps Escobar get elected to Congress. Unfortunately for Escobar, on his first day in office, Justice Minister Lara reveals himself to be allied with the DEA, giving a rousing speech condemning Escobar's criminal activities and cracking down on the operations of the other cartel members. Escobar is publicly embarrassed by these actions and forced to resign from Congress. In response, Escobar has his men murder Lara for revenge, leaving Murphy to mourn another good and innocent victim in the ongoing war on drugs. Colonel Carrillo grows frustrated by his inability to take down Pablo Escobar and the fact that most of the soldiers working for him are corrupt and on the cartel's payroll. And so, Carrillo creates his own task force known as the Search Block, comprised of soldiers who are unwilling to be paid off by the cartel. Peña joins a mission with Carrillo and his men to raid the home of one of the cartel's leaders, Gacha, and after apprehending him, Peña murders him in cold blood. Murphy and Peña get a much-needed win after the US enacts a new law that allows for anyone caught with an affiliation to drug trafficking to be extradited to the United States. In response, the cartel begins violently terrorizing local judges to scare them out of extraditing drug smugglers. Desperate for any solid evidence to use against Escobar, Murphy and Peña lead a raid on his accountant Blackbeard's home. There, they find a massive treasure trove of evidence detailing Escobar's various crimes, which they store in the Palace of Justice for safekeeping. That evidence includes photos of Escobar personally intentionally loading cocaine onto planes headed for America. With this evidence, Murphy and Peña gain the power of the CIA on their side and launch a series of large-scale raids on Pablo Escobar's various labs and warehouses, even managing to arrest one of the cartel's leaders, Carlos, later in the process. His empire at risk of crumbling around him, a desperate Escobar orders Ivan and M19 to storm the Palace of Justice and destroy all of the evidence the DEA has against him that is stored there. After the successful completion of the raid, Escobar coldly slaughters Ivan and his men. When Colombian presidential candidate Luis Carlos Galán is assassinated by the cartel at a rally, his speechwriter Dr. Cesar Gaviria takes up his cause to run for president on a platform against Narcos and the support of extradition laws. The DEA do their best to protect Gaviria as he runs for president amidst an escalating war with the cartel. Escobar then grows more ruthless in his tactics, hiring and arming children, and paying his men to murder any political leader or police officer who refuses to accept his bribes. Escobar then tries to kill Gaviria with a bomb planted on an airplane. Murphy manages to prevent the politician from boarding the plane, saving his life, but the other 107 innocent passengers aboard the plane are killed. The failed assassination attempt leads to massive support for Gaviria, securing his victory. Fearing extradition to America, Escobar flees Colombia, though continues his reign of violence in the hopes of intimidating Gaviria into standing down. Amidst this killing spree, Murphy and his wife Connie save and adopt a baby girl that they name Olivia, who was orphaned due to Escobar's violence. Eventually, Gaviria concedes to strike an agreement with Pablo Escobar to end the violence, in which the kingpin confesses to only smaller drug trafficking charges, is not extradited, and is allowed to build his own prison, run by his own personally selected guards. As Escobar prepares for his prison sentence, the Ochoa brothers cut a deal with Carrillo to rat out Escobar's cousin and loyal partner Gustavo in exchange for their own lesser sentences. When a captured Gustavo refuses to turn on Escobar, Carrillo and his men beat him to death. And so, a devastated Escobar enters a prison of his own making, which just so happens to include a home for his family, a fully stocked bar, a football field, and jacuzzi. Despite living like a king, the imprisoned Escobar grows paranoid, and after suspecting that cartel members Galeano and Moncado are stealing from him, he murders them both. Meanwhile, the rival Cali cartel is trafficking cocaine into New York City. Despite resenting Escobar for his openly violent methods, the Cali leaders cut a peace deal with the Medellin cartel head to help expand their operations into Los Angeles. Secretly, Peña delivers photographic evidence of the DEA's violent retaliation against the Medellin cartel to one of Cali's leaders, Pacho, hoping to inspire the Cali cartel to join their fight against Pablo Escobar. In the end, Murphy, Peña, and Carrillo are determined to uncover proof that Escobar is still running cartel operations while imprisoned, in the hopes of having him transferred to an actual prison to face punishment for his many crimes. When Gaviria refuses to help them, they bring proof of Escobar's continued operations to the press, creating a public outcry which forces Gaviria to act. He authorizes a raid on Escobar's prison compound, where the military forces kill many of Escobar's men, though the kingpin himself manages to escape. The fragile alliance between the cartel and the Colombian government is now broken, ensuring that Pablo Escobar's war for power will continue to escalate. You know, in the time it took you to watch the beginning of this video, I went to my kitchen and made an incredible dinner with honey mustard chicken, roasted rosemary potatoes, and garlic green beans from scratch, and still had over 6 minutes to spare. And that's all thanks to this video's sponsor, Factor. Factor's team of gourmet chefs create truly incredible meals that are fresh, never frozen, and dietitian approved, and deliver them straight to your doorstep. Plus, there's no cooking or meal prepping involved. Just pop one of these delicious meals in the microwave or oven, and you'll be enjoying the flavors within 2 minutes. Just go to their website, select from a variety of dietary options like keto, calorie smart, and vegan and veggie, pick from over 35 different options for which meals you want to receive and how frequently they're delivered, and that's it. I'm a terrible cook. I hate shopping for various different ingredients at the grocery store, spending several hours prepping and cooking a meal that doesn't even taste that great, and then being forced to just wash all the pots and pans that I dirtied up along the way. And so oftentimes I just find myself eating fast food. But as I get older, I want to take better care of my body and not just fill it up with greasy takeout. So I'm super appreciative for Factor for helping me achieve my nutrition goals without breaking the bank or breaking my spirit in the kitchen. Oh, and did I mention they offset 100% of their delivery emissions and source 100% renewable energy for their production sites and offices? Because they do that too. You can get 50% off and free shipping on your first Factor box using my link. So just click my link in the description below or scan that QR code with your phone. I genuinely love Factor and I think that you will too. And if you use my link, you'll not only be getting a great deal on a great service, you'll also be supporting my channel so I can continue making content like this. So thanks to Factor and thanks to you for watching. Now let's get back to the recap. In season 2 of Narcos, Pablo Escobar is still in the wind and trying to rebuild his empire. President Gaviria has offered over $1 million to anyone with information that leads to the kingpin's arrest. Escobar manages to rehabilitate his public image by holding his own televised interview, professing his willingness to return to prison, if not for fear of the corrupt government killing him upon his surrender. This leads to a resurgence in his support amongst the people of Colombia, frustrating Gaviria and the DEA. La Kika is still a loyal sicario for the cartel and convinces Escobar to hire his friend Limón as his personal chauffeur. The increasingly erratic Escobar orders La Kika to carry out horrific violence against their enemies, while Limón is reluctantly forced to get his hands dirty, eventually leading him to join the violence and commit his first kill. Meanwhile, the Medellin cartel itself begins to fracture. After having killed fellow cartel leader Mancado, Escobar is now targeted by the man's widow Judy, who assumes control of her late husband's operation and declares her own war against Escobar. Judy is aided by Don Berna, the former head of the Medellin cartel security, who is similarly bitter over the cold-blooded killing of Mancado. With Pablo Escobar continuing to evade capture, US President George Bush and the DEA make sweeping changes, including installing Army veteran Arthur Crosby as a new ambassador in Colombia and placing Claudia Messina as Murphy and Peña's new boss. Messina declares to Murphy and Peña that if they continue to act recklessly or out of line, they will be fired. Colonel Augusto Pinzon is installed as the new head of the Colombian search block, and he resists bringing Murphy, Peña, Messina, and the rest of the DEA into his operations, or allowing his resources to aid the Americans' own mission to bring down Pablo Escobar. When Pinzon insists on a show of force instead of the DEA's proposed stealth approach, another raid to capture Pablo Escobar ends in failure. In response, the merciless Escobar orders his men to slaughter the police officers patrolling the streets of Medellin. On average, during his reign, Pablo Escobar had over 400 police officers killed a year in the city. And so, Gaviria reluctantly fires Pinzon and reinstates Colonel Carrillo as the head of Search Block, knowing the ruthless cop would do whatever necessary to bring down Pablo Escobar once and for all. This act manages to unnerve Escobar, and his wife Tata begs for her husband to flee for the safety of their family. Even Murphy and Peña become unnerved by Carrillo's ruthlessness, as the colonel kills anyone who stands in his way, even those unarmed and in custody. As the war on drugs continues to spiral out of control, the reluctant Limón attempts to leave Escobar's side and flee to safety. He tasks his friend Maurice to give Pablo Escobar's location to the DEA to secure his own immunity. Murphy and Peña relay this information to Search Block, but are denied the opportunity to join the raid to finally catch Pablo Escobar. As Carrillo leads his team, they unfortunately discover that they have been led into a trap, as Escobar's men slaughter the Search Block before the Kingpin personally kills Colonel Carrillo. Murphy and Peña are devastated by this act, while the duplicitous Limón secures himself a higher ranking within Escobar's thinning inner circle. President Gaviria then names Colonel Martinez as the new head of Search Block, but Peña fears that Martinez's outdated methods will prove ineffective in apprehending Escobar. The bitter DEA agent aligns with the like-minded Search Block officer Trujillo, who becomes his new closest ally. As Pablo Escobar's violent reign continues, his various enemies forge an unlikely alliance in the hopes of finally taking him down. Judy Mancado, Don Berna, and right-wing paramilitary leaders the Castaño brothers form the Los Pepes, aided by both the Cali cartel and intelligence from Javier Peña. The Los Pepes begin tracking down and killing many of Escobar's sicarios and closest allies, including his lawyer Fernando Duque and mistress Valeria Velez, displaying their bodies in the streets as a threatening show of force. Murphy grows concerned about the extent his partner Peña is willing to go to bring down Pablo Escobar, as he is now openly working with and enabling other violent cartel figureheads. The Los Pepes then track Escobar's mother back to the family's compound, which they violently raid. Tata and her children manage to escape, but Tata's brother Carlos is killed in the chaos. Escobar is furious by the attack on his family and tries to send them away to Germany for their own safety. Murphy finds and apprehends them, bringing them back to Colombia to be placed under government protection. Peña finally realizes the Los Pepes are going too far in their violent acts and he can no longer condone their actions. Furious that his family has been captured, Escobar then detonates 200 pounds of C4 outside of the presidential palace, causing massive destruction with many innocent casualties. With this act, Escobar completely loses the support of everyone in Colombia. His empire is now falling apart, with the Cali cartel moving in to take control of the drug smuggling operations in Miami. Murphy captures La Kika, finally finding justice for his partner Brady, who was killed by the Sicario in Miami years prior. Now, only Limon remains amongst Escobar's closest allies. As Pablo Escobar retreats on the verge of defeat, the Los Pepes begin to turn on themselves, with the Castaño brothers attempting to kill Judy Moncado and Don Berna to take over their cocaine operation. When Judy seeks the help of the DEA to flip on her new enemies, she instead becomes the asset of the CIA, who want to pin the US's alliance with the Los Pepes solely on DEA head Messina and Javier Peña. And so, Peña is forced to leave Colombia and return to America to await punishment. As the season comes to a close, President Gaviria ends the protective custody on Escobar's family, leading Tata to plead with her husband to turn himself in to ensure their safety. But Escobar refuses. Despite Peña's doubts, the search block under Martinez's command managed to finally track down Pablo Escobar. Murphy and the DEA aid the search block as they raid an apartment complex, killing Limon as Escobar attempts to flee. Murphy manages to shoot the escaping Escobar, and Trujillo finishes off the kingpin, putting a final end to his violent reign of terror. As everyone celebrates their victory, Murphy is forced to reckon with the question of whether all he has done to reach this point was worth it. Unfortunately, the death of Pablo Escobar does not mean the end of Colombia's drug trafficking. The Cali cartel celebrates their rival's death, and the opportunity that the absence of the Medellin cartel offers them. But unbeknownst to them, as Javier Peña awaits trial for his actions back in America, he is instead asked by the US government to continue the war on drugs by bringing down the Cali cartel. In Season 3 of Narcos, Javier Peña receives a promotion from the DEA and is lauded with praises for the downfall of Pablo Escobar. And now that Steve Murphy has returned to America, the mission to bring down the Cali cartel falls squarely on Peña's shoulders, alongside his new agents Chris Feistel and Danny Van Ness. The Cali cartel leaders include CEO Gilberto Rodríguez, his trusted brother Miguel Rodríguez, head of US operations Chepe, and head of distribution Pacho. Peña faces opposition from CIA station chief Bill Steckner, who resists Peña's action-packed heroics and instead cuts a deal with the Cali cartel to cease drug trafficking operations within 6 months in exchange for keeping their money and their freedom. Peña is furious by this, wanting the cartel heads to face harsher punishment. Meanwhile, Gilberto announces to the cartel about the deal struck with the government to exit the cocaine business within 6 months. And so they have half a year to make as much money as possible before ceasing all operations and living wealthy lives in peace. Many of the lower-ranking cartel members aren't happy by this decision, and Gilberto orders their deaths for their disloyalty. One of those killed is Claudio Salazar, a member of an allied cartel who abuses his wife Maria, whom Miguel has taken a romantic interest in. Miguel confesses to Maria his part in having her husband killed and helps her build a new life for herself and her son. Miguel is grooming his own son David to follow in the family business, but unfortunately, the young Rodríguez is a screw-up whose ill-plotted schemes draw unwanted attention to the Cali cartel's operations. Gilberto has taken the opposite approach with his son Nicholas, sending him to law school to keep him away from the violent and dangerous family business. Following Claudio Salazar's murder, Pacho travels to Mexico to lay low in the company of the cartel's Juarez drug lord ally, Amado Carrillo. Amado tries to convince Pacho to stay in the drug business and continue supplying cocaine to Juarez. Pacho considers this as he has built an empire for himself that he is reluctant to walk away from, even with his massive wealth to retire on. Ultimately, Pacho explains that Gilberto and Miguel accepted him for being gay when his real family couldn't, so he wants to remain loyal to them instead of going into business with Amado. Meanwhile, Claudio Salazar's mother, North Valley cartel leader Gerda, wants revenge for her son's death. With the Cali cartel pulling out of their alliance with Amado, the North Valley cartel swoops in to take their place. Now aligned, Amado gives up the location of Pacho's Mexican hideout. Pacho survives the attempt on his life, but his brother is paralyzed in the shootout, and so Pacho returns to Colombia, swearing vengeance on the Salazar family. Despite the CIA's position of allowing the cartel to voluntarily cease operations, Peña continues his quest to bring them to justice. He tracks down Franklin Jurado, a wealthy banker who helps the cartel launder money. Franklin has an American wife, Cristina, who is frustrated by constantly being stranded in Colombia while her husband is away on business. And so the seductive Peña wiretaps her phone and seeks her help in convincing her husband to turn against the cartel. Peña also seeks the help of search block head Colonel Martinez and Cali Police Chief Calderon, who is secretly a corrupt cop on the cartel's payroll. Elsewhere, DEA agents Danny and Chris secretly track the Cali cartel's head of security Cordova, who leads them straight to Gilberto's secret hideout. Peña, Martinez, Danny, Chris, and Calderon lead a raid on Gilberto's home and apprehend the cartel leader. Calderon secretly calls in an army of corrupt police officers to thwart Gilberto's capture, but Peña outsmarts them all and retains Gilberto in custody. With Gilberto arrested, Miguel steps up to run the cartel in his brother's place. He and his erratic son David are furious about Gilberto's arrest and seek revenge on anyone they believe is responsible. They kill Calderon, no longer trusting him to serve as their inside man within the police, and head of security Cordova for mistakenly leading the DEA straight to Gilberto. Cordova's friend and underling Jorge is reluctantly promoted to become the cartel's new head of security, despite his aspirations of leaving the criminal life behind him. Resentful of the cartel leaders, Jorge secretly offers to help the DEA bring down Miguel in exchange for his own immunity and safe passage to America for his family. With Gilberto in prison, the North Valley cartel views the Calis as weakened and plot to usurp them for dominance. After North Valley soldiers attack a Cali party, Miguel declares an all-out war between the rival cartels. Despite Gilberto's intentions to move forward with the cartel's ceasing of operations, Miguel is now all about war and dominance. And so, Gilberto reluctantly tasks his son Nicholas to help mediate the family business. Jorge reveals Miguel's location to the DEA, who stage a massive raid. Unfortunately, Miguel hides within his own walls to evade capture, leaving Jorge to fear that he has blown his cover and will be caught as a snitch. Worried that his family will suffer the violent consequences for his traitorous actions, Jorge is then forced to frame another cartel member as a snitch, whom Miguel and David then kill. Meanwhile, Peña arrests Franklin Jurado in the hopes of forcing him to flip against the Rodríguez family. Cali henchman Navajante kidnaps Franklin's wife Cristina to ensure the DEA has no leverage on Franklin. Peña gets help from Don Berna and his army to stage a rescue mission for Cristina, but as he attempts to reunite husband and wife, Peña is informed that Franklin has been murdered in prison, orchestrated by Nicholas Rodríguez. After failing to capture Miguel, Peña is officially pulled off of the Cali cartel case and given until the end of the day to wrap up all of his business in Colombia. Desperate to still bring down Miguel, but with only hours of jurisdiction left, Peña tasks Jorge with helping him one final time. They plot a fake attack on Miguel's home to trick him into fleeing, after which they will be waiting along the escape route to arrest him. And so Jorge says what could be a final goodbye with his family before joining Peña for the raid. But as Jorge begins his part of the plan, warning Miguel of the fake threat, David finally realizes the head of security is in fact a DEA informant. government. As Miguel begins suffocating Jorge for his betrayal, the DEA realize his cover is blown and move in to save him. Ultimately, Jorge is rescued in the nick of time, while Miguel Rodríguez is finally apprehended. As Peña prepares to return to America, he celebrates his last-minute victory. Unfortunately, he then discovers that the Cali cartel have funded the campaign for Colombia's new president, ensuring lenient sentencing for their crimes. When he takes this revelation to U.S. Ambassador Crosby, he is informed that America doesn't care to intervene, as the Colombian president is a useful political ally. And so Peña is left distraught over the realization that all of his hard work could be undone thanks to his own government's machinations. In the end, Miguel and Gilberto are reunited in prison, leaving Pacho and Chepe to run the Cali cartel and debate whether or not to surrender as per their agreement with the government or continue the cartel's drug operations on their own. Pacho finally gets his revenge on the Salazar family, slaughtering Gerda and the rest of her sons, before he and Chepe turn themselves over to the police. And so the four heads of the Cali cartel are all reunited in prison, knowing that their presidential connections will see them soon released and back on the streets with their massive fortunes. Javier Peña is furious by this reality and realizes that the only way to keep the cartel heads behind bars is to find their accountant Guillermo Palomari and force him into testifying against them. As Peña races to find Palomari, so does David Rodríguez, who wants to ensure the accountant's silence. Jorge selflessly teams up with Peña to find Palomari before the cartel, earning himself and his family the safety of witness protection in America. With Palomari's testimony, the Cali cartel leaders are forced to face actual consequences. Pacho is killed in prison by members of the North Valley cartel, Chepe is released and tries to realign with the Castaño brothers who instead murder him, and Gilberto and Miguel Rodríguez are extradited to the United States to face lifetime sentences in prison. Even David Rodríguez, who attempts to lead the Cali cartel in his family's absence, is gunned down by the North Valley cartel. His final mission finished, Javier Peña cynically resigns from the DEA and publicly condemns the Colombian president's alliance with the cartel and the United States government's willingness to let it happen. The Cali cartel may be defeated, but the North Valley cartel is ready to take control of Colombia. And in Mexico, Amado's empire grows stronger, meaning for all of the DEA's efforts, the war on drugs continues on.